And we're on session 15. Woo! All right, so we got our daily stuff. We got our daily practices that we have incorporated into our lives for our own health, our own strengthening, our own encouraging. We do the morning devotionals. We do worship music. And we have a listening prayer activity. And I hope by now you're fully engaged with that and doing that. What's that word? Automatically. It's part of your routine. We are in the inventories, and we have had a month or so to start working on those. A little bit of a recap, and then we're going to do a quiz. Do you guys like quizzes? Pop quizzes? Pop tests? Or is it pop quiz? Pop quizzes. What we've been looking at, how we're made: spirit, soul, body. Our body being our physical person, the soul being our mind, will, and our emotions. Our mind being, define our mind, our intellect, and our will is our thoughts. It's a long holiday, guys. Our will is our thoughts, what we think. What happens when you think?
Bad things.
Bad things happen when we think. Our actions happen, right? And our belief systems are what we believe out of our experiences is actually what we think, and then we will act. And so that is our mind, will, and emotions, our intellect, our thinking, and our feeling. And a lot of us have lived life right out of here. We're designed as God's Spirit has to be able to connect with a spirit, with God's Spirit, to be loved and encouraged and nourished. This is where our life is to come out of through God's Spirit. And that means if we can connect to God's Spirit, we can connect to other spirits. And some can be, just like alcohol, life-giving. If you've drinking alcohol or smoked weed or crack cocaine, they're life-giving until they destroy your life. And so it's that fake life-giving. It's the solution. But ultimately there is one solution, and it is God. And just like the worms. Remember we read the story about the worms? The worms aren't bad, it's just how we get them. So this is a solution that will be life-giving for eternity. And so that's our goal right now, is to embrace and to feel that solution in parts of you that maybe haven't. Or maybe you're new to this and you've always gone to a solution outside of yourself, outside of the safe measures of the norm. And maybe you're somebody that's been smoking weed and drinking alcohol, and you need that to sleep now. You need that to function. You need that to wake up in the morning. And you're really realizing that this is death. I'm living death. So this is the concept that we want to do, is bring life into your soul and your body. What we looked at was we've been given these basic instincts. So those were the worms, the instincts. And we looked at 3 classifications. We looked at our social, we looked at our security, and we looked at and all the girls said sex. And I see you guys, anyway. All right, so then we looked at God's will, the simple rules of the road, the authority. What did we look at as authority? How did we measure that authority in the rules of the road?
Too much engine.
Remember, it was 50 kilometers per hour. And our will is the horsepower, 450 horsepower. When we get the worms our way, because we do have the power, we have the horsepower to do it. We don't like to be restrained or held back. Who really does? Right? Then what happens?
We lose our feathers.
We lose our feathers. We build resentments. We build fears, shame, and we hurt people. So this is what's blocking us from the living water, the life-giving, the true solution to my life. These are the things that are blocking me from that. So can we have can we have solutions from outside and then from God? Can we have a half and half mix? I think at some level some people do, but there's still hopelessness in it. There's still like, you take 2 steps forward and 3 back, or you take 1 forward and you just stay there, you're stuck. So I think that somebody that's done a lot of work and done some confession and some counseling and therapy and that kind of thing, I think that maybe you've covered some ground and had some freedom and kind of seen that there is a better solution, or at least seen that this false solution is destructive and you want to change. And I think there's a process of doing that. And that's why I'm never critical of our support systems that we have in our culture, in our society. Let's say the 28-day rehab centers. I've learned not to criticize them because I was involved in a 9-month rehab center, and the higher power was a biblical higher power. I didn't say this is how you have to believe or who you have to believe, but this is where we're going to get the power greater than ourselves from. But most of the men that entered our program, they started at the 30-day and the outpatient, and then another 30-day, and then another outpatient, and then 2 more 30 days. And so many of the times that this is a process of really understanding that this isn't working. And so maybe if I'm doing it halfway and I get some relief, I feel a different solution than just drugs and alcohol, but there's still that I've programmed my brain to get this solution. And so I believe that there's a process and a journey of, do you ever fully, I don't know. But I know that God has sent his kingdom to earth. So I believe that you can have peace and hope and unity and restoration in all aspects of life. Life is still got storms in it, right? But they don't have to consume you. Yeah. So that's our goal, I believe. Of recovery, of relationship with God. So what we did last week, we looked at our heart as a corner store, and we looked at the things that are on it. I know that the things of God, and we're going to look at this a little bit more. How do I know if I have the things of God in my life? If my shelves are full of his things? It's the same way I know what kind of tree it is. I'm not very good with trees, but I've seen a few fruits in my life, and I can go, that's an apple. That must be an apple tree. That must be an orchard full of apple trees. Got that one right, yes. There's an orange, that's an orange tree, and so on and so forth. And so I think that I can see what is in here. If I have the solution of God, I can see the things of God, which the things of God's Spirit, the life that he gives us is peace, contentment and satisfaction and self-control and patience and endurance, love, compassion, empathy, all of those things, right? And so that's a good metric of, am I having the solution of God, or am I having an outside solution? So what we want to do is, in the storeroom in my heart, there's only so much room. And what we looked at last week was the inventories. And so some of you have totally embraced it and loved it and said, I wish I could do this forever and more. And some of you looked at it and was like, no, this is too hard. And I believe that you're this far into the journey because you want freedom, because you're able to continue. So I believe everybody here already has the ability and the endurance to continue this process. But it's not easy sometimes to really look at the things that you're resentful of, or the sex list, the shame, the fears, all those things. And maybe you've put those down for so long and now you're having to readdress them. And we want to clear off our shelves. And I believe that when we look at the inventory, I believe the key to that is willingness. Because if you have willingness, then God can work with that, right? And you don't have to do it perfectly. And what is perfect? Let's define what perfectly is. And your perfectly is going to be different than your perfectly. And what is perfect? And what's this measure that we're trying to attain? I think the goal is to be willing to want to confess these things. And here's a list of the major ones. And I'm willing to do it like I've been asked. And so that's where we are right now. This is the confession part. Confess with your mouth. So this is a little bit of a quiz. I believe you have that in your books. We have a little bit of a confessional quiz. I'll read it through really quick. This is to see where you're at. Somebody call out the page.
121.
121, page 121. All right, quick quiz. Resentment. Number 1, resentment means to re-feel.
That's what it says.
Yeah, that's not what it says.
I put false because that's not what it means.
Resentment means to re-feel. True. Self-pity.
That's not what it says.
Self-pity is self-resentment.
So it says.
Self-pity is self-resentment. True. Resentment is an acting of casting blame. True. In most cases, resentments are the truth. Oh, a manual buzzer, I like it. We control others with our resentment. False. Resentment cuts us off from God. Resentment can cause physical illness. Resentment builds relationships. Love, tolerance, and patience is opposite of resentment. Our hearts were designed to hold resentment. Means to do over again. Prayers of blessings for others will help rid us of resentments. True. Fear. Fear can be worse than being in jail. I don't have that experience, but if you did, the answer would be true. Fear is felt every day. True. Fear leads to action.
It can be true and false.
It can be, well, if I have fear of getting hit by the bus, and I have the reverent fear of that, then I'm going to have an action by not crossing the street. But yeah, like a lot of these aren't 100% defined as. These aren't all absolute, so please don't take it like that. 4, healthy fear demands a reaction. True. We should get rid of all fear. False. When we live in fear, we are in control. False. Courage can replace fear. Procrastination is a form of fear. True. Unhealthy fear leads to action and success. False. Fear causes insecurities. True. Monetary giving can help relieve fear.
What's the answer?
True.
True.
Everybody give your money. Sex. God has given us sex for pleasure and reproduction. Animals are designed to have sex for reproduction only. True. Most
I don't know, it's the dogs and the dog person.
yeah, their goal is to get pregnant. It's not like, hey, how you doing? Anyway. Most humans have confusion around sex. Yeah. Self-will controls the sex instinct in humans. Self-will controls the sex instincts in animals. False. Sex is sin. False. Unhealthy sex conduct is a cause of guilt and shame. Guilt opens the door for God to come in. False. Service to others will help overcome an unhealthy sex instinct. True. God will be the final judge of our sex lives. True. You have a little bit of a self-evaluation. So it's interesting that we've had about a month to do the inventories, which is a lot of work. It's like the rubber meets the road, rubber hitting the road, rubber rolling down the road, whatever that saying is, there's action involved. So this is a big action step. You got the inventories, there's a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of photocopying, there's some tears, some grinding of teeth, there's some resharpening of pencils, and there can be a lot of work involved in it. We've had a month, and so the goal of this is to have a lot of stuff on paper and get ready for confession. There should be the goal of, this is coming to the tail end. I don't want anybody to be stuck in this is like the pig pen. You don't want to get stuck here because it's not necessarily pleasant and it's stuck in your mind. And so we want to get this out. We don't want to be in the inventory room holding all this stuff, right? We want to let it go, and that's the key. So why is somebody stuck here? Why is somebody going back to the inventory room and putting it in the basket but then never getting rid of it? Or why is somebody continuing that wants a new solution, keep going back to an old solution? Why does that happen? And we probably all know those people. We've been those people. It's a commonality to a recovery process. And of course it is a process. This isn't, I want help, right? How many people have raised their hands for help and was given help and then everything was all better? A lot of us have asked for help more than once or twice or 20 times. And as long as you're still alive, there's still help available, as long as you have the willingness. I think at some point we do receive this new solution. And I know in my own personal life, I can look back and go that whatever the temptation is, and in the last 13 years or so, I've had lots of temptation and stuff that never happened when I was using. All of a sudden, this guy shows up with this and that and the other thing, and you see something on the road, and you're like, oh, why didn't that happen when I was using drugs and alcohol? Where was that when I was desperate? And I can honestly say that due to this new solution, I look back on that and I see the consequences and the results of it and go, it's not a solution anymore. And I think that we're always geared to find another solution. And if I don't really have an experiential experience, then I'm going to go and look for other solutions. I think we're just geared for that. We're geared to be comforted. We're geared to have this solution, right? And when I don't have that experience, then I look other places. And so it might not be alcohol and drugs anymore, or porn and sex. It might be working. It might be overeating. It might be sitting on your phone for hours and hours at a time. It might be collecting wealth in a portfolio. And it's so easy because some of these things are very life-giving, right? What's wrong with collecting a portfolio? What's wrong with, maybe you've blown 5, 10, 15 years and now you're back on the horse. And if you haven't experienced this, if you haven't experienced the true power of God, the life-giving power of God, then I think we're designed to go and see other solutions. And so we can get glimpses of this. But I think that we tend to go to other places. And there's nothing wrong with building a portfolio. Like, God wants his children to be safe and have a roof over their head and not live in debt and all of these things that are life-giving. But when I start to do it on my own and it becomes a solution, and it might be a trick because I start striving, I start proving, I start building, I start growing. I grow a bit of an ego. I'm prideful. And then I go back to wherever we came from. All right, so the problem. This is some terminology that I've come to know as an issue. And running a rehab center for 8-9 years, everybody has come in. I've assumed and heard as an intake worker, they all want help and they all want to change. Right? So that's first and foremost, why are you here? Why are you at a 9-month treatment center? What makes somebody do that? Life break, no, I want to change. I want to get sober. So then when I say I want to get sober, why can't I? Why are these people actually pausing off of life, not pursuing relationships or jobs or advancement in career? Why do they spend 9 months and then not get sober? Like that should blow your mind. Like, why would I take this time off and try to change my life and it not work? What's the problem? I'm always the problem. I get that.
I don't mean you, I mean
Self, not me personally, but me personally. So this is really what I've seen. Surrender versus compliance. And to really understand this, it can be very simple, but it's very complex. But to really understand this, I think we can put terminology to I get to, I have to. So when I have to go to rehab, when I have to do the inventories, when I have to give my money, when I have to pray for people, how long does that last? Right? So then I have to get to somehow go from compliance because I know that I really had no choices. I couldn't die and I couldn't use anymore. So I had no other option but to go to a homeless shelter and ask for help. And then when I was there was a lot of things that I hated. They made us go to the library. I'm an adult. Go to the library and here's your project. Number 1 project. I had to take out 3 books. Like I'm in kindergarten. And their assumption is most of the people there had never been to a library. I had my grade 12. I've been to a library. This is dumb. Why am I doing this? But due to that attitude, I almost got kicked out because I procrastinated. I didn't really want to do it. I already knew that kind of stuff, right? And so I believe that most of us start at compliance because we got to do this. How many diets start with, whee, I get to count my calories, or I get to only eat, what's the fat? Protein and fat. I get to eat, 70% fat and 30% protein, or whatever it is, right? How many people are super excited about that day one? There's those people that are super, awesome. And then there's the rest of us that, because I can't breathe properly, and because climbing up the stairs, and because I can't chase my kids around, and because I have trouble tying up my shoe and I can't play sports, I'm gonna have to do something. And hopefully you can move from having to get to, because a have to, you will never follow through. You'll follow through for a month. And all the people in January the 1st that signed up for, that's when the gym makes the most money. And by February, they've made their money, and it's a ghost town. I don't know if you've ever been to the gym in February. It's a beautiful place, right? It's all clean, sparkly. No one's there to bug you. You got the hot tub to yourself. Beautiful thing. And so in this, because the worms aren't the easiest way in your mind, they have the best ending, but there's an easier way. So in our mind, we have to, this is the wrestle of what surrender is and what compliance is and where there's compliance because I want to surrender. Right? I'm sick of going around in circles. Imagine having to go to rehab every year or every 2 years and starting all over again. Because what sobriety brings you is a new life and new responsibilities. And I get to move in the journey of life. But if I keep using it, I have to go back to rehab. Man, I must really like rehab then. That's what you would say. Like, that guy likes rehab. Like, you have to at some point go, that guy likes rehab. He doesn't want responsibilities. He enjoys, getting fed, the 3 hots and he likes rehab. He's been to like 15 of them. But do you really like rehab? Or are you living out of this fear and control and doing it your way still and complying and then ending up falling flat on your face? So the key is getting from compliance to surrender. So this is a little article that I found, and it's related to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a little paper written, and I'll just read kind of the ending of it. One of the first things to recognize is that the presence of compliance blocks the capacity for true acceptance. So here's a new word, is acceptance. There's a key right there. Acceptance is a huge key. Since compliance is a form of acceptance, every time the individual is faced with the need to accept something, he falls back on compliance, which serves for the moment the individual consciously believing that he has accepted. But since he has no real capacity to accept, he is soon swinging in the other direction. His seemingly acceptance is a thing of the past. In other words, the best an inwardly complying person can do towards accepting is to comply. Wherever there's a have to, there's a resentment. Wherever I have to, I refeel. I have to do this. And what happens when there's resentment, there's block to God. In the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says resentment is the number one reason we go back to drinking. Resentment's a big deal. So wherever there's have to's in my life, I'm going to build resentment, and eventually, what's the point? I need a break. If I told you the kind of break that I would take on a 3-day bender, you'd be like, that's not a break. You're nuts, John Ruby. To me, that's a break. That's how I take my break. You take your break your way, go read a book and have a bath and candles, right? I'm going to go spend $2,000 and not remember the next 3 days. Question.
If surrender always starts with compliance, then you get to surrender through acceptance? So you comply because you have to, but then you accept and then you surrender?
Yeah, true acceptance will lead you. You're brilliant. True acceptance will lead you to surrender. So where there's acceptance, there's freedom. So can I be locked up in jail and be free? Yeah, because really what's holding me. So if I accept what I've done, I can still have freedom. I can be free. I can have a relationship with God. Right? It's a beautiful place to be free. And there's ministries designed to help inmates, walk in freedom and walk in relationship with God and be locked up and still be a producing member of the society. And I've seen some amazing jail guys, they're witnessing, they have their own little church. I see guys at detox and that have left because they've been using it and they've been compliant, and when they get to detox and realize I have no other options again, Please take me back. Please take me back. Please take me back. By the time I go see them in detox, I have like 5 people in line to see because they're our biggest salesman. And so accepting the reality, then I surrender. Anyway, good.
So what does that entail?
Acceptance?
Yeah. And how do you fully accept it?
How do you fully accept? And that's the battle. And we'll kind of look, we're going there. But then how do you fully accept? Yeah, that's the hardest. That's the hardest. What, 18 inches is going from here, from have to get to. And so is there a magical solution? Willingness. Get out of the way. Go, because of this, what now? And trust that God has a better plan than you ever did. When I started on God's plan, coming from the trade world and working, getting sober, and then giving my life to God for Him to supply my financial needs, and Him leading me into a care home for mentally ill men. Like, I would have never pictured that on my resume. And in my third or second week there, I laughed at myself because I said, this isn't even work. It's not much pay, but it's not work. This is fun. This is just hanging out with the dudes, ordering open-ended egg rolls. Yeah, did that too much. Going, loving them and being family to them. And I was like, God knows me better than I know me. Because I don't know how well I'd be doing or where I'd be doing if I was still using my intellect to go back to the 12-hour trade. Would I get restless, irritable, the bored? Yeah.
Do you think that the harder that the rock bottom is, the more someone is willing to surrender and all that stuff? Or?
Rock bottom is a pain. When I hear rock bottom, I hear a measurement of pain and suffering and whatever rock bottom is to that individual can promote accepting that I don't want to do this ever again. And then I have to accept what recovery really is. Compliance creates other problems for the individual. Since it says yes on the surface and no on the inside, it contributes to the sense of guilt. Right? We have resentment and now we have guilt. The person who says and feels, the person who says yes and feels the opposite has an inward realization that he is a two-faced liar. This stirs up his conscience and evokes a feeling of guilt. Compliance, to detect the unconscious compliance in the reaction of apparent yielding. It is only when a real surrender occurs that compliance is knocked out of the picture, feeling the individual for a series of wholehearted responses, including, in the alcoholic, his acceptance of his illness and of his need to do something constructive about it. When I look at heart disease, when I look at diabetes being a disease of the pancreas. And so when you get a diagnosis of heart disease, of diabetes, they give you the medication. This is your course of plan. There might be a surgery involved. And for most of those diseases, so for those two diseases especially, you can live a very normal, happy life and outlive lots of people, right? If you implement what the solution is. If I have to implement these things, especially in the heart disease or the diabetic, if I have to not eat donuts, if I have to quit smoking, if I have to quit the margaritas, if I have to quit this and that, how long does a diabetic before, and a diabetic can relapse all day, right? Blood sugar, needle, blood sugar, so he's in constant relapse. The same as an alcoholic or drug addict. Because when I don't accept the solution as a way of life, then I'm still stuck in I'm still trying to accept the solution. So then I never move out of compliance. And with compliance comes guilt and shame. Compliance comes resentment. And then I'm blocked off to God. So, acceptance is where we gain freedom. So I look at those two diseases, especially alcoholism, diabetes, and heart disease. And so wherever somebody is compliant, then 6 months of doing this program, 6 months of cutting this stuff out, red meat, all that stuff, then they go back to it. So I believe that compliance gets in the way of looking at your storeroom shelves. I think compliance is the thing that gets in the way of doing this work, or minimalizing it, or justifying it, or whatever. Compliance is the thing that gets in the way of you moving forward into the full life-giving relationship that God has for you. Cool? So when we come off a 2-week holiday and you have some homework assignments, I think that's a good question. Where am I being compliant? And how do I surrender? How do I accept this? And I know a lot of you in this room, online, I know a lot of you aren't fighting for your lives. I know when I worked at a rehab center, they all came in, 50 pounds underweight and hearing voices. And they're fighting for their lives. Like somebody's going to kill them, and it's them. And the 4 drug dealers that they owe money to. But they don't even care about that guy. Those guys. They're the ones that are going to kill themselves. I need help from myself. And so it's easy to be in compliance when it's not life and death. But can you still accept the reality of the need of a savior, the need to be saved and have a new solution, or are you saving yourself? Because God came here to save. Am I saving me, or is God saving me? It's hard when life is. I think that's our challenge in our culture. Our what are we? Are we a first world culture, first world country, first world problems? Right? We have so much. We rely on ourselves so much. So this is very hard to surrender to the fact that I've been separated from God. I need to do it His way with His will, whatever His purposes are. It's really hard to get from that to surrender. That's what I've seen anyway. Some of us have an easier time, and when I used to go into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous at the beginning, there was always that guy. I hated the guy that said, I am a grateful alcoholic. I want to hit that guy because imagine hanging out with sober alcoholics. They're the worst. It's not even fun. Like, oh my goodness, drink. Let's all drink. Right? And then now you're sober, trying to be compliant or like wherever you are at the journey. It's not necessarily the most fun room. And there's that guy. I'm a grateful alcoholic. And then I realized why. Because his life was so miserable, it was easy for him to surrender to a new way of life. The way I lived it was a trash can fire. What now? Yay, I'm grateful that this bottle took me there, so now I get this life. And this life, getting the worms, your way always seems easier because it's our intellect. Like 2 + 2, there they are. But the result and the consequence is separation from God, isolation, being destroyed. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're going to quick move into the second part of the homework because you've done so well with the inventories and got them all done, ready to read them, confess them, get rid of them. You don't want Chef Boyardee from the 70s on your shelf. It's embarrassing. Get rid of it. The can is bubbling. What's up with that? And some of you don't even have labels on your cans. Some of you, I have no clue what's in here. And I don't want to find out and no one else needs to know. Let's get rid of it. Right? So let's not get stuck in the storeroom going, I wonder what it is. Right? Where's the can opener? Forget the can opener. We don't want it. So I leave this process with you and your pace setters. I just really encourage you to get it over with. Don't overanalyze it, intellectualize it, pacify it. I ran out of words. But try to do it in a surrendered way. All right, so after we've gone into, this is the rubber meets the road, after we've gone into this confession time, a lot of you are relieved. One thing that I will say, if you like fires, if you're that guy or girl, it's like, I'm so happy this is over, I never want to see it again. Like, one, don't do it here. Do it in the safety and privacy of your own home. And then two, keep your harms list, because we're going to need that. So whatever you want to catch on fire, try and keep the harms list. And it'll just make something else easier. Trust me. We're going to now look at repentance. So when I got the worms myself, right, I'm confessing these things that have separated from God, but getting the worms and the reasons why I want to repent of. So what does repent mean? It means turn away from and walk the other way. It means missing the mark. It means, okay, I was doing it like this. Once I've realized now that I have a fear of authority, a fear of abandonment, then I look at my actions, and my actions, maybe if I've had a fear of abandonment, I would never be abandoned. So every relationship I thought got a little bit rocky, I would abandon them. Because I got what I took, I got what I needed, and when conflict arises, right? Every relationship, you need conflict. If you don't have conflict, it's not a real relationship. You'll never have intimacy and closeness. Conflict is a great thing. Learn to love conflict. I'm working through it. Not just conflict for the fun of it, but having conflict. And when there is conflict, right, maybe I'm someone that says, I'm going to abandon you and you can't abandon me because I have this fear. So not following through with conflict is, I want to repent of that. Not wanting to do conflict, not being able to do conflict, not being able to, right, have community or closeness. So those are things that I want to repent of. So this is where my character has been built. So over the course of time with the little black dots, the belief system, my character has been produced out of. So the defect is a flaw or imperfection or insufficiency that impairs worth or usefulness. A good way of looking at it. Character, the combination of behaviors, traits, features, and qualities that identifies, sets apart, or distinguishes someone or something. The combined moral and ethical structure of a person or group. Willing, agreeable, ready, consenting, ready to act gladly, ready to accept and tolerate. Interesting that willingness would be in that part. So what I'm going to do is, with a magnifying glass, look at my character, look at what I've become due to the things I believed. And I want to put them on a scale, and I want to say, is my usefulness being impaired to God? Or whatever my purpose is my usefulness being impaired at whatever level because of me? So I think this is part of the cleaning up your storehouse. So you've chucked out all the stuff, and this is kind of the dusting of things. This is kind of the sweeping of the floor. This is let's get ready to fill up the house again, the storeroom. I know that whenever in our second stage houses at the addiction treatment center, whenever somebody moved in, the first thing they would do is what? Wipe down all the walls, ask for a can of paint. They're coming into this environment and they want it fresh. So this is really what this is all about, is taking that stuff off the store and then painting up the shelves, getting ready. Getting ready for what? We've talked about this a little bit, about the fruit of the tree. How do I know that I'm living life out of the Spirit of God? How do I know that I'm connecting with the Spirit of God? I believe that you will have the promises of God. You will have the things that the character of God. Peace, love, joy, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. All of those things I will start to see out of. I will start to live out of. I guess that's how you know you're winning the race, right? When these situations, when the storms happen, how do I react? Am I closed? Am I shut out? Am I defensive? Am I angry? Am I running away in fear? All of those things. Am I willing to have God remove all of these defects of character? We'll come back to that real quick. Interesting story in the Bible, in Psalms. You've probably read it by now. Psalms 51. There's this young lad with a bunch of brothers, and his brothers and the nation is facing another nation, and it's kind of like this standoff. Like, no one really wants to get dirty and hurt, but there's this big dude across in the other nation, the bad guys, and he's massive. He's like the giant. And they say, it's kind of like the thumb war. Rock, scissors, paper. Whoever wins this battle, you're the winner. So you take our biggest guy, we'll take your biggest guy. Who do you got? No one would go. There's no one to be gotten. So the young guy, David, he comes out into the battlefield, sees everybody. What's happening? What's going on? This has been going on for a while. This guy's been, calling out for rock, scissors, paper. We're all too scared. That guy's big. He's got some big scissors. He's got a massive rock. He's got the hammer. I'm scared. And I don't want to look like a fool in front of everybody. Right? Little David's like, hey, I've had some fights. Fought a bear. Wrestled a lion. I'm good. I'll help. What do you guys need to do? Here's your cheese, here's your bread. Can I go fight? Put me in, coach. And so coach was like, all right, kid, let's end this. We're getting bored. It's getting old. I'm going to put my equipment on you, because I'm the king, I'm the coach. It's here. It's fit for a king. You should wear it before you win this fight. So he puts his equipment on. It doesn't fit properly. It's clangy. He's not used to it. He's like, this is your equipment, it's not mine. My equipment is these rocks and this sling. I'll go out and slay the giant. And he does. And he's eventually appointed king over the land. And this is a righteous man after God's own heart. And once there was another war, and he's king, and he's at home. I don't know why. Most times when there's a battle for land, the leader should be there, the king should be there. But he's chilling out on his terrace in his home. He's out sunning or whatever he's doing. And he sees across the rooftops a bathing beauty. And he's like, that's a nice bathing beauty. And I'm king. Get that bathing beauty over here. And she comes over here and they hang out. And this bathing beauty has a husband. And the husband is on the battlefield. And while the battle is going, the bathing beauty gets pregnant. So the king suggests, let's get the husband back and give him leave of absence, give him a break. He's done well. Come back, mighty warrior, and hang out with your wife. Do your duty at home and in bed, and we'll have a couple glasses of wine. And this soldier was so determined that he just stood outside of the doors waiting, like, put me back, coach, there's a battle. He had integrity and honor, and he knows that it's not time to take a break because all his brothers are out there fighting the battle. And he does this a couple of times. So the king says, our only option for us to look better than we pregnated a man's wife that's helping win a war. I'm sitting at home. What's our options now? Well, let's put him in the front of the line, and we know he'll die, because we'll get others to move back. He killed a man because he impregnated his wife while they were at war for his country and his name. A man after God's own heart. Incredible story. So that as any king has some cool pages or little people that tell him stuff and maybe reflect a mirror image kind of. And the wise men, and this guy his name was Nathan. And Nathan just told the king a story. He said, King, there's two men in a town. One was super rich. One was super poor. One had flocks of sheep, cattle, everything. The other poor guy had one sheep. It's all he had to his name. It's all he had for his family. It's all he had to eat. A traveler came into the town and saw the rich man. And the rich man said, yeah, come on in. I'll feed you. I'll care for you. And he went and had some servants go over to the poor man, and they took his sheep, slaughtered it, had a barbecue, fed the traveler. And the King David, exploded. Who's this guy? Kill him. Like, why would some rich guy with hundreds of sheep go to the poor guy with one? Kill him. Whose house are we burning down? Where's this guy? And Nathan says, you're that guy. That's what you did. It's a cool story because we've all killed. We've all lied. We've all betrayed. We've all been lazy. We've all sat on the rooftop terrace when we should be fighting. We've been consuming. But this is a man after God's own heart, and he was forgiven. And he was forgiven because he did this. He went to God. He confessed to the prophet Nathan. And then he asked God to change his heart. I've only sinned against you. And he was restored. And it doesn't nullify that horrific story. It's a horrible story. Imagine having that written against you. Well, I'm king of a big nation. And what defects do you see in that story? What character makes a king somebody that came from nothing as a little shepherd and killed a giant, one rock, scissors, paper for his brothers, and now, whatever decades later, this happens? What's wrong with his character? What are the flaws in it that created that? What do you see in that? The thing is willingness. He was willing to admit it. He was willing to take ownership. And he said a prayer. And so that prayer is in Psalm 51 about King David. So am I willing to admit these wrongs, these character defects, to identify them, and then ask for God to remove them? Am I willing to do that? I know that I worked with a man. And we got there was some massive healing and some massive stuff and the confession stuff, and we were off to the races. And then we got to this. And he says, the reason I do what I do and I have the portfolio that I have is because of these defects. And he weighed the cost of God removing these defects. No one would fear him on the workplace. No one would revere him. His money wouldn't be his anymore. He says, I'm not ready. I can't. This cost is too much. See that? Is that Where are you at with that? All you have to be is willing for God to take those away. Some of you have made a mess of your life, and it's not that hard of a reach. Please take this crap away. I'm willing. There's a list of character defects in your book. I want everybody to turn there. It's on page 130. Everybody has their books. Whatever applies to you, whatever you've used as a defect, wherever you've abused the privilege of any of these words, just circle them down. Just circle them. If you see others that should be there that aren't, please put them down. I've put a few of them. One being needy. Only applies to me. This could be a key to acceptance. Don't try to understand that you can believe. Just be willing to believe, then you'll begin to understand. Woo. Tweet that. Don't try to understand so that you can believe. Like, don't try to figure it all out. Just be willing to believe, then you will begin to understand. I think at some level you have to start working against yourself. You have to start opposing the things. You have to, instead of being greedy, be generous. I think for some of us that takes work. And God has put little things in place, like he calls this tithing thing. You know, the most successful people I saw in rehab was really practicing these little things. And I know guys that would get their little $100 a month welfare check or $500. And I would see them, and they would never tell you, but they would put in $10, 10% of 100 into like the church basket. Do you think the church needs $10 from them? No. And I keep an eye on those guys. And they're always the guys that come out sober and stay sober. It's amazing. Just something little like that. So I know you have to start to work against some of these defects, and where there's pride, start to put in humility. Where there's defense, start to put in what's the opposite? I trap myself on that one. What's the opposite of defending yourself? Vulnerable, understanding.
Presenting the other cheek.
Presenting the other cheek. What's the opposite of proving yourself? Being humble, putting others first, giving, all of those things. There's a list there. Okay, so this is where we are at. I'll draw a little diagram. We have a spiritual problem. It's kind of like the roof. This is where we start the process. Out of this, we have our instincts. Our instincts, my way, so the worms, my way. Out of this, we have experiences where we get the black dots. Remember the black dots? What's attracted to black dots? What is black dots? Garbage. What's attracted to the garbage? Rats, fruit flies, all that stuff. I get, out of this, I have experiences. I learn from each other. We have family of origin. All of these things. I ran out of room. We learn, and that creates our belief system. Right? And then what we believe, we do. Correct? So in this separates us from God. And that's that kind of representation of horsepower. 450 horses. So then we start to turn over our will and our lives to God and start to understand that and go through confession. That's what we did here. Or that's what we are doing. And we're being rid of this. And then we are looking at our character issues. And we're becoming willing, and we're repenting, and we're turning those over to God. And then our last step will be next week. Okay, so that's a repent. That's kind of the summary of what we've done for 15 weeks. Okay, so you have a little bit of homework. The homework is, did you circle any of those items on that list?
All of them did, yeah.
So whatever item, and this is why I don't give the homework first, because I would want you to give yourself the full value of circling the things that pertain to you. After they have circled each word, inform the students that their homework assignment is to write out the benefits and consequences of using each of these defects in their lives. Hey, get working. You do not use a defect of character to not benefit yourself. Why do I lie? Well, so somebody doesn't know the true me. Right? Why do I defend myself? Those things have a benefit. But if I'm doing it my way, I get my results. So there's always a benefit. And then what's the consequence? So each word, I want you to write out the benefit and the consequence. And there's a reason for this. So write those out. Take a piece of paper and write out all the little things that you circled or check marked. And if you circled them all, it's a beautiful project. So this is part of working against yourself, right? This is part of, I do these things, I want to write them out. I actually want to see them on paper. I want to see how they benefited me. And then I want to see the consequence of it. So benefit, write that down, and consequence. Yes, next week. If you have a stellar pace setter and they're got you so great on pace and they've been meeting with you maybe on the side a little bit, then yes, the character defects should be ready for next week. And the week after, yeah. But you are at your own pace. This is your own journey. And some of you have built up loads of this and it's overwhelming. And if you're not ready to tackle this, I want you to commit to that, because that's like being stuck in the pig pen. You don't want to be stuck there. Like, move forward. So don't get stuck there. The other stuff, do this in little chunks. But are you really being honest? Have you sat down for hours? You've sat down and watched Grey's Anatomy for 14 seasons. So don't tell me you can't sit down and watch and work on yourself. All right.